Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Brenda Rivera. And Brenda is a nurse passionate about empowering women in high stress level careers to create a life they love outside of work. With over 7 years of nursing experience, she has battled burnout frequently and wants to encourage others to see the way past feeling stuck and miserable where they currently are in their career. She's also navigated being first in her family and friend group to break strong past generational cycles. She now lives life with the mindset of changing the family lineage and building a legacy for future generations to come. So welcome to the show, Brenda.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I'm excited for our conversation.
I am so excited about this because this is going to be a little different conversation from what most of my conversations are, but hang on, guys. You are just going to absolutely love this. So, Brenda, you are a pediatric nurse, correct?
Yes, I work currently in the hospital setting in a large hospital in one of the major cities where I live.
Okay, awesome. You work in Orlando, right? That's the hospital that you work in?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And Brenda and I, gosh, we met about a year ago at a conference and have kept in touch. And when we had our conversation a few weeks ago, we talked about, so Brenda she's not an oncology nurse. She doesn't work in the cancer unit, but she works with kids who have cancer, but are in the hospital for other reasons. And during our conversation, we just, like, the things that she was sharing that hopefully she's going to share with you guys today are just so amazing. And I really wanted to put this out there because we all know kids can teach us so much. And just the outlook on life that kids have is something that we adults can always, always learn from. And so what Brenda's going to share today is Brenda's going to share some tips that that kids have taught her in her years being a pediatric nurse. And so, Brenda, give us a real quick, just a little of your background. How did you get into nursing? How did you get into pediatric nursing?
Yes. So when I went to nursing school, I went through a lot of different clinicals. I explored a lot of different types of units, a lot of different types of settings. And while I was in nursing school, I also worked at a daycare very near where I went to school. And I realized that as I was working already with kids in that daycare, I fell in love with the different age groups, with involving myself with the children, and really just like seeing their perspective in life. And then when I did my rotation in pediatrics in the hospital, I realized how the perfect combination fit me so well. And when I started working there as a nurse, you just see such a large array of things. The type of unit that I work at, we see many different types of children with different backgrounds, and we get a lot of chronic complex kids with various types of illnesses and complex things going on. Many of them have cancer backgrounds and diagnosis. Some examples of stories that I will share in a minute is things like that they've had to have parts of their brain removed because of tumors, kids who've had to have one kidney removed, or they have no kidneys, they've had to have both kidneys removed because of tumors, kids that have had to have like parts of their eye reconstructed because of tumors. So many different types of things. And then since I don't work on the oncology unit, they visit us possibly for like different infections that they have, because the oncology unit is considered very clean. So if they have different types of viruses, they are encouraged not to go there to keep it clean, and they go to the unit where I'm at. So if they're fighting different infections, they need IV antibiotics for different things, or if they have, let's say, like tube feeds, they're not doing well with their tube feeds, we need to reintroduce them, they need to tolerate it well, they come to us for things like that. And so I don't see them while they're getting their chemotherapy, radiation, and those type of treatments, but I see them when they're having other things going on. And I see children after they're past the removal of that organ that they have to have removed because of the tumor, and then life after. So I truly have seen a lot of life perspective on how it is when your life has completely been flipped upside down after things have happened, like half of your brain being removed or having no kidneys at all, and then really seeing how the family and the child views life in a completely different way. So that's kind of like my background and the kind of an overview of what I see right now where I work.
And that's a really good perspective. I mean, so you get to see kids when they're in the midst of treatment, but for other things, but then also like, and hopefully for children, when they have cancer, like removal of the tumor, done with treatment and hopefully cancer free. And so like oncology and those nurses and stuff don't necessarily get to see the kids in survivorship, but then you do because they come back for certain other things, and so you get to kind of see how they're doing after active treatment and how they're dealing hopefully in survivorship and being cancer free.
Yes, exactly.
That is, oh wow, kids. Did you always want to be a nurse?
I not always, but I looked more into it when I was in high school and I explored different areas. Like I not where I wanted to be, but I like looked into nursing homes at first and different populations. But then when I worked at that daycare while I was in nursing school, that's when I was drawn to kids for the first time.
Very cool. All right, well, let's dive in. So let me give us your first tip and your first thing that you have learned in your years and from the kids that you work with.
Yes. So I'm going to give a few points and then I have stories that I want to share with you guys. These stories are things that I've personally seen. I'll try to be as general as possible to try to
Mhm.
respect the privacy of everyone that I have encountered during work and their families. But these are stories of families and patients who have really tried to make the most of their situations. So, the first point that I want to review is really rewriting the narrative of your story and your situation. And an example that I have with that is we had a family that came for a Disney trip. We have a lot of families like this. They come for the theme parks and it's planned to be exploring different areas in the Central Florida area. And then a child gets sick and they have to be admitted in the hospital. And we're nearby. So we see a lot of those situations. And this particular family had a day planned out at Disney. This is very common at Disney where when the child is younger, they have a whole day where they pick a Disney princess and they get to dress up as that Disney princess. They have a whole little area where Disney will give them a makeover. So they'll have like little light kids makeup. They'll put lipstick on. They'll have a princess bun on. They'll do like their nails and like simple nail polish. They'll put princess shoes on. And then they get to meet this Disney princess at like some part of the castle or somewhere at Disney. And that's usually
Wow.
like a common thing that families do when they go to Disney. It's like an extra thing that you pay for. So this family had that planned out for the patient. And obviously that was canceled because the patient had to come to the hospital. And we work with someone that's called a child life specialist. If you've never heard of what this is a person who has a psychology background that they work in every pediatric unit. There's one assigned where I work, and they help the child understand what's going on to their level. So depending on their age. So if there's specific exams that are happening, they explain it in their age. If there's IVs that we have to do, if there's a surgery or procedure that needs to happen, they get props and they do things like through play to explain what's happening. So this child life specialist had this idea that she was going to recreate that Disney experience that they missed out on. So I wish I could show you guys a video of how she set all this up, but she got a room that we use usually for procedures. So this was empty at the moment, and it has a chair. If you could imagine a chair that you usually get blood work in, this was like a chair that was a recliner, very comfy, very like tall, nice chair. She set up that chair with a Disney princess dress. And then she had a whole setup for nails, makeup, getting hair done, all the
Oh my
things.
gosh.
And she set up the room and decorated it and surprised the patient to still have her experience and her day in that room on the unit. So that that whole experience always stays in my mind, because when you think about life doesn't always turn out the way that we're thinking and the way that we're planning. But I think when we can try to still have the best experience or recreate things to the best of our ability, or still make the most of that moment in the best way that we can, it's not going to be 100% the same. Just like that experience that she recreated was not 100% the same, like going to Disney and meeting like the Disney princess, but it was still so special. And it was so nice to have to still be in the hospital, but then to have that memory alongside it and to remember both together. Like, yes, I had to go to the hospital, but I also remember when I got that princess experience on the floor. So I always tell myself, how can I recreate something or a situation that didn't turn out the way that I was hoping, but I can still recreate it and bring some kind of magic and some way to that. So that's the first thing that I wanted to review. And
So
just that
how did the
example.
patient do with all of that? Was she just like thrilled and excited, or?
She was so surprised, and the family was too. Of course, they were not expecting that, and it was something that they just kind of casually said to us, so they didn't think anything of it, that they were gonna have something made for them. So it was really special. Even a video was made, like for the hospital, like as a, I think, a part of a commercial or something. It was very nice, a beautiful setup.
And what princess was she?
I think she picked Cinderella.
No, of course. Come on,
Yeah,
Cinderella with the ball.
classic.
Absolutely. All right. So being able to recreate or reframe an experience that might not be going your way to still make it something powerful or special or magical in its own way.
Yes.
And kids have an amazing ability to be able to do that. And it's something that, we might have a lot less upset if we could, work to figure out ways to reframe things. I love that.
And they fully enjoy it. So as an adult, I do think that we are more susceptible to the lens of, oh, well, this is not what I originally had planned. Like, this is not the same. But I don't think kids, when, like, for example, when that child saw that room set up with all the decor and the chair and the dress, she was not thinking in her mind, this is not what I had planned. Like, she was full of excitement and she was like, let's do this. Like, I want to dress up. I want to get my hair done. I want to dive into this experience. And that's what I think about. Like, we can recreate things, an experience that didn't turn out how we planned, because that is how life is. Things just don't turn out exactly how we're trying to set it up and plan things out perfectly. But we still have to fully enjoy a new story that we're writing for ourselves, because if not, we're never going to enjoy the journey.
Ugh, I love that. All right. Yes. Enjoy the journey. What do they say? Like, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yes, and that is so true.
All right. Great. So let's move on to tip number 2.
So for the second one, I have seeing each day and each moment with a new lens. So an example that I have for this one is we had a specific patient that had to have feeds through a feeding tube, so did not eat normally. And every morning, every time the doctors would round on the patient, because the doctors, they come in with the whole team. It's like a teaching hospital, so it's a very large group that comes in every day to talk about the plan and if the family has any questions. When they would come in the morning, this patient, who could not eat any regular food but would eat through a feeding tube, would ask everyone in the room what they had for breakfast. And this patient would ask with so much excitement, would always say, oh, what did you have for breakfast? And some people would say they didn't have anything, or some people would say, like a small little thing that wasn't nutritious. And this patient would know to tell them, you're supposed to eat a better breakfast. You're not supposed to just have coffee for breakfast. Just things like that that I thought would bring so much light to that moment. And it's just funny how this is so ironic. The patient does not eat, but would still care about what other people had for breakfast. And it was just like a moment of seeing it with a new lens. Like, I can't eat, but I still want to make this situation fun and ask you what you're eating and make a joke out of it and still enjoy the moment, even though I'm not eating real food.
Did they ask them to like describe what they had or how it tasted or, anything like that too?
I don't know how this patient would do this, but they would make reactions to what the person would say. So they would be like, that sounds good, or that's yummy. But I would think it would be so funny because the patient wouldn't know if it was yummy or not. But they would, they just care about having fun in the moment. So to them, it's just like making the best of that moment, anyways. But I just thought it would be so funny, the little comments that the patient would make too for each meal.
And then so how could we as adults take that experience and create something or see something like, can you give me an example like of what an adult or what you might do to see something through a different lens?
I think it's about flipping the narrative. So, what I think about is that patient couldn't eat, but they were not stuck on, well, I can't eat, so I need to be miserable about food. I'm still going to talk to other people about food and still like make this situation fun. And you could tell that the patient wanted to make the other person happy and smile, even though they were not focused on their own food. They still wanted it was more like they were reflecting the light on the other person to still make the situation a happy one. So I think about even when we're all in our dark moments, and we have different levels to this and different grieving processes, but when we can, I do think it's important that even when we're in hardships to still flip it and not just think about, I cannot do this, but still focus on the other person and think and say to them, how are you feeling? Like, how are things going for you? How is this situation? How are you handling this situation? Like, how is life going for you right now? And I heard this phrase the other day, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. But when I walk into a room, I don't want it to be about here I am, but I want it to be about there you are. So really focusing on other people and focusing on, how can I make you feel seen? How can I make you feel special and encouraged? And not when we put all the light on us, it really doesn't bring us more joy or more happiness. Usually we feel more fulfilled when we're connecting on a deeper level with someone else and they're sharing with us their experiences, and we feel more connected in that way. Not when we're just only talking about us. At the end of the day, you don't feel more fulfilled when you're only talking about yourself. So I think about that a lot, how he would always make it, there you are, not here I am.
Well, and I mean, and that could be something for people, and I love the way you phrase that. If somebody's going through cancer, like it really is in so many ways all about them because of appointments and how they're feeling and all of this. And even if at like one point in the day you could turn around to whether it's your caregiver or somebody in your family or a friend and be like, so what's going on with you? Like, how are you doing? And sometimes when you're thinking about other people, it makes what you're going through just feel a little less heavy if you can kind of like see other people and bring a little bit of light to other people even in your own darkness.
Yeah, and I have heard this from someone else who has gone through the experience of cancer. I personally have not, so you can add in or correct me when I say this, but I've heard them say also that when they are living in that and it becomes your everything and your life and you breathe that and that's all you're thinking about all the time, they don't want that to be the center of every conversation. They don't want people to look at them and just see the label cancer, and for people to just look at them with like pity and that's like all they're thinking when they see them. But I've heard them say, I want to talk about normal things. I want people to see
Yes.
me and like say, I like your outfit. I like how you look today. What are your plans? Like they want to feel normal. They don't want to feel like they have this label of red flashing signs of this is who I am. I'm all about this diagnosis now. So I've heard people say that. And I think about that too. Like, how can I feel deeply connected to you where, like, how do you want to feel? If that's not what you want to talk about and that's not how you want to be seen, then what brings you joy? Like, let's focus on that.
Love that. Beautiful. Awesome. All right. Number 3.
So the next thing is having a new curiosity and joy for the circumstance. And examples that I have about this, other stories, I've had patients that they have been with us either for some type of important event, whether it's like a birthday or a holiday, and they unfortunately have to stay, so they have to experience that day at the hospital. But I have just seen how that could be recreated in such a beautiful way. So for example, somebody was with us for their 16th birthday, and the child life specialist, like I've said before, how they could bring in extra things because we have donations to the hospital. They brought in this beautiful like gala dress for the patient for that day for her sweet 16. And then she loved a certain Disney character. So her hospital room was decorated all over with this Disney character. So hanging from the ceiling, a bunch of pillows of that Disney character, things on the bed. It was just covered. And I believe a cake was bought too with that Disney character. And they got to wear that dress, that gala dress, because we get certain donations. So they had that donation to give the patient. And so recreating that new curiosity and that new joy of, so this circumstance that I'm in, I have to be in the hospital for this, but I can still have a beautiful day. It's still my 16th birthday. I still get to dress up in this dress and all these decorations. Like, I'm going to enjoy this. So that was one story. And then another story was we had someone that had to miss their high school graduation and they were with us, and they kept on talking about how they were really excited to be able to walk across the stage, and they weren't going to be able to do this because they were staying with us for a few days. And so this was actually one of the nurses' ideas. She got everyone cutouts of graduation caps, and we all got things that would like make noises to celebrate and like different shakers and bubbles. And everyone lined up in the hallway on both sides. And we set up this special time where the patient could walk across the hallway, and we had put on the music for graduation, and we had this whole setup with someone speaking. So obviously it's not the same, but we had the setup where they felt like they could walk down the hallway. They had like 20 people celebrating them. They had the music playing, and they could feel that joy of what they were going to experience in the moment that they wanted, but they got to experience it there. So just finding that new curiosity and that new joy. This goes back to, I really try to recreate things that I'm thinking to myself, things have to be this way, but then I reframe it to, but how can I just make the best of this moment? Because I don't know if I have a year left. I don't know if I have 10 years left, but if I have a very limited amount of time and I'm hyper focused on how my plan is supposed to work out in some kind of way, and I miss out in 90% of the joy that I'm supposed to have in my life, then I'm really only robbing myself because I'm not getting my full experience of life and of joy that I'm supposed to have. So I'm going to try to recreate and reframe the most that I can. And obviously, we're not always going to be in this mindset, but really trying to make the most of it and really trying to make a moment as special as it could be.
Kids are they're so resilient, and they can be so full of joy, and even going through hard times like that. And I mean, I wish every hospital did things like that. I don't know, every hospital may, but just the fact that your hospital does things like that to, to brighten up kids' lives when they're going through just the muck, and that the kids, that they get so much joy out of it is just so powerful. And I'm sure it's wonderful for the parents too, that you guys are doing things like this and making, such a hard time that much lighter, at least for kids when they have to be there.
Yeah. And speaking of resilience, that brings to mind we have so many younger children. So, specifically, either like a toddler or up to the age of, let's say, like 7. If they have specific type of surgeries where it's like, let's say, laparoscopic, and they had something as like an abdominal procedure. Usually, when you're closer to an adult age and you have something abdominal, or like for women that have had C-sections, you know how uncomfortable that is, and moving around is hard, and like finding a new rhythm of, now how do I go to the bathroom, now how do I get out of bed. It's so funny how when you see kids in that age of toddler to like 7 and they have procedures like that, you see that they get confused for a minute with like the weird feelings, because they're like, oh, why do I feel like this? But then they just like try to move the best that they can, and then they're in the hallway playing. Like, they're just thinking, get me out of here, I don't want to be in the hospital anymore, like I want to run around and go home and play. And it's funny because when we have kids, because we could see a pediatric child, depending on their complexity, up to 21 or 25, so we do see older young adults as well. And when they get closer to that adult age, it's not the same. It's more of like, oh, this is so painful, I don't want to do this, like don't make me. And the younger kids are just, I want to play, get me out of here, I'm like ready to run down the hall. So I just think it's funny how with the resilience, they don't think about, this hurts, like I'm going to be miserable in this. They just think about, oh, this was uncomfortable, but I still want to play, like I'm still going to push through this because my end goal is having fun right now in this moment. So that's what came
And
to
I'm going to
mind when you
figure it
said
out, and they
resilience.
don't have all the baggage,
Yeah.
going on in their brains of this has to be hard. It's more like, hey, this is what I want to do. So how do I get from A to what I want? And it may not look like it's supposed to, but I don't care.
Yeah, and they just don't think about it. They're just like, I want to go play, so I'm just going to try to do it, and we'll see how it goes. And then they're running down the hall.
Well, and you think about it, like, so when kids are learning how to walk, like, how many times do kids fall on their diapers, trying to figure it out? Like, they don't stop and go, this is too hard, I keep falling, I'm just going to quit. It's, all right, how many times do I have to fall until I figure this out and get to my end goal, which is something that we could all learn from as well, because as adults, if we had adult brains, we'd be like, nope, I'm not going to do this anymore because it's too hard, and we would never walk, right?
Yeah. I think as a child, they just think about, I want to do X. So, for the
Mhm.
example you gave, I just want to walk. So, I'm going to do it. I just want to play. So, I'm going to play. Like, they don't think about that there's a chance that they're not going to be able to walk or they're not going to get to play. They just already assume it's going to happen, and they just walk into it. They just like go through the process of doing it, and they figure it out in the moment. And that's really special because as an adult, we lose that. And I,
Mhm.
I think life would be a lot less stressful if we could just think about, I'm gonna get there, even if it takes longer. This is just gonna be a journey, but I'm still going to get there and I will figure it out.
Fabulous. All right. What next one?
So, making each moment spectacular. And I say that with all the stories that I've said already as well.
Mhm.
But for this example, there is a child that I'm thinking of that every time any of the nurses would go in the room, we were busy doing what we would have to do for the patient. And the patient would always say, "Can you sit with me in bed? Can we play? Can we do something right now?" And if we were too busy to be able to like actually take the time to sit down, they would always say, "Okay, well, when you're done with the next room, can you come back? And then when you come back, can we sit on the bed? And can we pretend the bed is a car? And where would you want to go? And what can we see while we're here in the bed in our car ride?" And they know how to make the moment and their imagination take them to a whole nother level. So for this patient, they would love to say things like this, like, "Let's make the bed a car and go in this car ride." And when you sit with them and you hear everything they're saying, it's like a whole new world. They take you through their experience and they describe everything. They say, "Okay, we're going in the car. Now we're going to go really fast. Now this is bumpy. We're turning really fast over here. Oh, look at that. We're passing by a restaurant. Let's go stop to eat." And just this whole scenario, their brain takes them everywhere. But it's so special how they let the moment just fully be. Like they sit in the moment, they experience the moment, and they just let it be spectacular. They live that moment to the fullest. And I think that's special for people who might get overwhelmed with like the big things, like the big goals, and feeling like it's because I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I'm not a high energy person. So sometimes it's really exhausting for me to think of, I need to do so much to get where I want to go. And I don't know if I have that much energy. But then to think about, well, what can I just do to fully live in this moment right now?
Mm.
And to me, that is so comforting. And it reminds me that I don't always need to be running. I don't always need to think about like how fast I need to get somewhere, but how can I just make the best and like the fullest experience that I can just in this one moment.
Oh, that is so powerful. And it's almost like it's not the opposite of the last thing that we talked about with resilience, like I'm going to do this and the end goal is always in sight and it's whatever you have to do to get there, but also just making each moment magical, spectacular and living in that moment and not necessarily always looking in the future.
Yeah, and not putting the pressure on yourself for it to be necessarily fast. Like we create our own timelines for ourselves that things have to be done, let's say in like a year. What's your year plan? What's your 5-year plan? What are
Right.
you expecting in the next month? And that's great to have those goals, and that's still a great outline to have in life to keep us where we want to go and when we're headed. But when things are not planning out the way that we want them to, I think it's important to reflect and to think about, okay, this hour that I have right now, how can I sit in this hour and just make the most of it? And just like remember what brought me joy as a child, like having that curiosity. If dancing brought you joy as a child, could you explore that even for 5-10 minutes or within that next hour where you're just reflecting for yourself? Or even if it's journaling out something that you need to reflect on, like really really reflecting on what did I enjoy as a child and what brings me joy today, and finding more opportunities to dive into that.
I love that. I love that. And even if you're going through cancer, like, and you've, just to take some time and not be thinking about oh, my next treatment or what's going to happen in the future, and just living the life that you have right now to the fullest, because
Mm-hmm.
we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so the
Yeah.
more we can enjoy today, the more fulfilled that our life will be, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last point that I have here is finding things to look forward to. So, for example, all the stories that I have already said, these were a lot of events and moments that were recreated. And once you have some kind of scary diagnosis or something chronic, that you know is going to be something long term, I think it's really important to remember that things could be set in place along the way to for you to find at least that one moment of joy or that one thing to look forward to. For example, on the actual oncology floor in the hospital, that team, they set up this beautiful prom for those patients every year. And it's a big event, it's a gala, it's a beautiful thing. And all the staff members and sponsors, they are the guest, but the patients are like the star of the show. So even if they're in their wheelchairs or however they come in a beautiful dress, they come sparkled up the best way that they can. If they're able to wear makeup, if they're able to have like a head covering, or if they have hair that they could do, they get themselves as best as they can to look nice for this prom. And it's all about them, and they're the center of attention, and there's a stage set up for them, and it's really about like celebrating them. And I just think it's beautiful to have things to look forward to in that way. And as adults, just remembering that we can still set up things that make us happy. So going back to the example of like dancing, do you have some kind of like dance video that you could put in your own home that's like a virtual class that you can attend? Or if you are able to actually go to a dance class and to exercise in that way. Or with like you being a therapist, what if someone would want to incorporate that as like, that's one of my goals. I want to have that mobility. I want to have that movement. Is there some way I can incorporate that? If that's what brings them joy and that's something that they could look forward to, then that's a beautiful thing, because it's something that truly fulfills you inside. And it's not all about, again, it's not all about the diagnosis, and it's not all about thinking my life is now going to be completely different, but what can I look forward to along the way? Or if it's making meals and recipes that bring you joy, even if you're nauseous and you can't eat it, or you can find recipes that do satisfy you and you're able to eat, but finding a way to make the recipe and then you enjoy it, or make the recipe and see your family light up when they eat it. Any hobby that you can find, whether it's with music, going outside, and just simply being in nature and looking at things outside. I find so much peace when I'm in nature, however that looks like. That could even be like simply taking a walk. When I hear the birds sing and I feel the breeze just coming on my skin, and I'm able to see like different animals and birds on the trees, that brings so much joy to me in a different way, that I know not everyone cares about that, but I know that that's what fulfills me. And I try to schedule that in so I can look forward to that. So I can look forward to like that 1 hour or 30 minutes, or even if it has to be 10 minutes that day of a walk where I know it's going to be peaceful. I'm going to feel the breeze on my skin, and I'm just going to let myself go and not think about stress and just fully enjoy that moment. So I think it's so special when you schedule those things in and prioritize what brings me joy and what can I find happiness in.
Oh, I love that. Wow. These are all so amazing. I just want to recap. So, one was reframing or recreating a situation to be able to enjoy, even though it wasn't what you had originally planned. Seeing each day with a new lens, having curiosity and joy for whatever the circumstances are, making each moment spectacular and finding things to look forward to in life, as well as it wasn't necessarily one of the 5 points, but just that resilience. And, these are all things that we can learn from the kids in our lives, from, just having the mindset of a child sometimes, and that always wanting to learn and being curious and just loving life, that so oftentimes life ends up sucking out of us in many
Yeah.
ways. So I love every single one of these. Thank you for sharing the stories. Your hospital sounds like such a magical place that you do these things for kids. And, I don't know if all hospitals do it. I hope that they do at least some form of that. But if not, then, the hospital in Orlando, that's really where you want to be with your kids if you have to be.
And I will say, these moments are not easy to create the right mindset for and to create. So if you have children close to you in your life, whether you have young children, whoever's listening in, if you have young children, or you have the nieces, or you have grandchildren, or you have young cousins, whatever children you have surrounding you, or if you could even volunteer somewhere, I think it's so important to be around it at least at some point, where you can just hear what they're saying, like see how they're acting, see what they're curious about, what they're doing in the moment. Because kids surprise us every single day. Like, I have these stories that I shared with you guys, but there's so many more. Like, they create this imagination that we just don't see anymore, and it's completely out of our scope. But when you're with them and you hear everything they're saying, it automatically brightens your day. So if you have children around you, I would encourage you. This is hard sometimes for you to create for yourself. So be around those children so they can give you that light that you need sometimes during the week.
Perfect. I love it. Every bit of it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Brenda. These are just bringing back joy and just, out of the mouths of babes. And, we can always learn from the children in our lives.
Yes. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
having me, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.